June is Audiobook Month. Join Viviana, the Enchantress of Books, and the Audiobook Lovin Series as she celebrates the authors and narrators who bring your favorite stories to life. Not only will this month be packed with exciting guest podcasts full of all things books, but stick around after each episode for some special information about this year's giveaway and more.
Hi everyone, welcome to Season 9, Episode 9 of this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. Today I am having the pleasure of chatting with narrator Curtis Michael Holland. Thank you for being here, Curtis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's 4:39 in the morning. I'm here with you, and yeah, I've wanted to be on your podcast for, I don't know, as soon as I heard about it.
Aw.
Yeah.
Thank you. So much so that you're up at 4:30 in the morning on technically Tuesday because you are abroad in Asia right now. So, wow, but thank you for this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating, and how you got started?
Okay. So I've been narrating since 2020, maybe, summer 2020. And that happened because I've been teaching overseas and doing theater and stuff over here for the past over 10 years now. So when the pandemic happened and all I don't know, it was really dramatic over here, like in my life, not just in Asia. So I couldn't act on stage anymore. I couldn't direct any shows either. And just everything was like really bad, and I really wanted to act, and I loved audiobooks. I feel like audiobooks and podcasts and things got me through that time, and really, I don't know, they got me through other things like dog walks, and just, when I was working out, sometimes I would listen to an audiobook instead of music. But so I kind of just looked into it. I was like, you know what, we got time, nobody's going anywhere. And so I went on the internet and I found all this stuff, and then I got to be okay at it. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you find that having that acting background has helped in that process of, from the prepping to even voicing and giving the characters different tones and stuff like that?
Oh, so much. And just being, because I'm a theater teacher. Oh man, my two truths and a lie isn't gonna work now. But I'll think of another one.
Go another
But
way.
but since I teach theater, like they inform each other. My narration and and other voice acting and teaching it, like it rotates, and it helps each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it definitely helps, in understanding character analysis and the arc of a story and pacing and energy and intensity and all those things, for sure.
I know a lot of times people think that it's the whole, hey, someone said I sound sexy, I'm just going to do an audiobook narration, gig. And I'm like, that could be part of it. I'm not going to take that
Yeah.
away. If you sounded like Urkel, maybe not. You may want to get some coaching on how to change that range a little bit where you talk like
Yeah.
Urkel, but then you come down here for, God, I forgot the name of the other guy that he used to play. But anyways, it's
Oh, yeah. Was it like Lamont?
Yeah, something like that. I think it was,
Yeah.
where, he was a completely different range, different kind of character. And it's just interesting how a lot of folks sometimes tend to think that there isn't a need for potential coaching that and learning a little bit when it comes down to the acting part, because a lot of people think that you're just sitting there reading the book versus performing the book. Do you find that too, that when you tell people that you narrate books, that you're like, oh, so you read them?
Yeah, they'll say that. Like, some of the most frustrating things I'll ask or say is, so how long does it take you? And do you actually read the whole book? And how can I do that? I think I could do that. I think I'd be great at that. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to teach you how to take my job. Like, unless you're very different from me and I can see that you have good work ethic, I'm not going to teach you how to take my job, especially for free.
Yeah, right? It always happens when people do that. And I'm like, I'm all up for developing and helping a girl out. But man, I've gotten screwed over by people that because
no.
out of the kindness of my heart, I'm a developer as far as a learner as well for my strength finders. Talk about corporate speak. And but I love doing that. I love helping others learn and teach. And so I teach, and then I've gotten fucked over. And so now I'm very, very particular about who I spend my time with nowadays because of that same thing. But I think that's the whole misconception of a lot of different careers, right? But specifically one that is so flexible as far as you make your own hours. You can travel and still work if you need to based on, renting a studio. And people just think it's really easy, but I'm like, no, it's not. And even if you're good at it, you should still do some coaching. Just you'd be surprised at things that you can learn, right?
Yeah.
In the time that you started recording back in 2020 to now, how has your process changed, if anything?
My process has definitely changed in speed. I used to take way longer. There are little things you learn along the way. Even not doing like the snap method. So like when you make a mistake snapping and you keep going and you just do like basically what do you call it, a free roll, but doing
Yeah.
the punch and roll. So actually like stopping and going back to the part where where you didn't mess up and continuing there. So that just has saved so much time. But also like me knowing how to narrate. With
Mhm.
each book, I feel like I get at least a percentage, no matter how small or big, I get better,
That's
and
good.
that really helps.
Yeah,
Because yeah, the confidence part is probably the biggest thing that everyone needs to stay focused in that moment and be confident that you are the person to tell this story. You are the only person that can tell the story, and you must tell this story. Yeah, you have to
Mhm.
have that confidence in you.
Yeah. That imposter syndrome loves to creep up though.
Yeah, but it doesn't serve us, especially when we're in the
True.
booth. So
True.
I do find that comforting because when you're in front of an audience, that's one thing. You're much more cognizant of them listening to you in real time. But when you're alone in the booth, you can remember that you must be connected 100% of the time, or you're not serving the text, you're not serving your listener.
Before you get into the booth, do you have some form of ritual or practice of the mantra? Anything that before, that moment that kind of gets you all riled up, or some exercises?
Yeah, I warm up a lot. So like in one of because I'm a theater teacher. I already thought of my other two truths and a lie, so don't worry. So I'm a theater teacher full time here. And so I know like all the warm ups, I know all like the stuff about our anatomy and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a coach named Nick Redman that really helped me develop my warm up regimen. And I'm not here to like promote her or anything, otherwise, but I would. But really just getting your body warmed up and aligned, focusing on your breath, then starting with sound and then taking things to speech and articulation, like going through that pattern. And then my husband knows. He's like, you're always singing before you go in the booth. I always know you're about to go in the booth because you're singing, and that's
who,
kind of
need,
my thing.
who needs that red light on your door saying I'm about to record, right? When you can just hear you singing down the hall.
Yeah. That and
Now,
like I'll go around, I'll be like, like I'll amp myself up. I'll be like, like I'm the shit. I'm amazing. I could do this.
so I'm not
Everybody's
gonna,
welcome.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There's moments too, especially when I first started, and to this day, after 9 years, I still get nervous sometimes, and I'm
Hmm.
still going. All right, you got this, girl. You can do this. It's just fine.
Yeah.
It's they put their pants on the same way that you do. Let's go.
Do you narrate also, or
I do not. No, no, no. This is strictly the
okay?
vibe.
So you're talking about
The
podcasts.
Yes, the
Yeah.
podcasting. And sometimes even when I do panels, because when I go to conventions and I do learnings and workshops and things like that, right before going on, I need to convince myself that I know what I'm doing. And
Hmm.
and it's just getting that energy up, because a lot of times people think that it's just and some people do it. I know some people they seem to just kind of waltz into the room and be completely confident. Some of us might need a little bit more work, and
Yeah.
others, even though I may not be a narrator, because I listen to other podcasts, and when I'm editing this stuff, I'm like, I should have warmed up before talking to so and so, because I can feel my mouth and the mouth noise being a lot
Hmm.
more tight. And so even I have learned, even tricks from you guys that you guys have shared throughout the time, to do things here and there to not only mentally and emotionally get me going, but also physically get me to a point where we have these chats and it's like, hey, what's up? We're just catching up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm. Now, aside from the routines and the prep work, do you get an opportunity to talk to the authors to get a little bit more insights, and any other info that they might be able to provide you, or are you not?
I try. Well, that's one thing I like about the more independent or small publisher side of things. Because if it's someone like, say East House Productions. Like I've only done one series with them, but I'm like friends with the author, you know, now. And I wasn't, no one said like don't talk to her or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. Whereas with the publisher, a lot of the bigger ones, they're like, no, all communication has to go through me, them, the producer. Or they'll be like, just send us a list of questions and we will relay that to you.
Okay.
And then I'm just a little not superstitious, but I never want to fuck anything up. So I don't contact them until it's on sale. You know, like I'll follow them on social media after it's on sale if it's a publisher title. But other than that, I will, with my independent authors, I like to give them the full experience. I'm like, you know what? We're, we're paying for this whole production. We're making this work. We're going to do everything we can. I like to have a Zoom with them before I even start.
Mm.
And I like, I give them a little intro packet for them to read through that answers a lot of their questions. But I like to get to know them and what they're all about before I get started working on their words. It's a pretty sacred thing. It's like they're little Bible babies. Like, not to get religious. I don't want to piss anybody off, but
No.
it's like they're little Bible babies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the authors have worked very long and tiresome on variety of different facets to get that book out, from coming up with the stories to writing it to editing, the marketing, the graphic design work. I mean, there's so many different layers. And then they're
Yeah.
trusting you with their
Yeah.
baby to make sure that the pronunciations of certain cities or names are done correctly, or that the cadence of this character is done this way versus that way, and all this other things that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate it when the time is taken to recognize that part of the work versus just it says here in the chapter 34 that they're Russian, but I'm just going to do this other accent. And you're like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's definitely one of the things that make independent work fun,
Yeah.
because you don't get that. Like I'll always want to do it because I love that relationship you build with
Mhm.
them, with the author.
Yeah. And sometimes the authors have no clue that it could be done this way or that way, or that there might be some other little nuances that they may not even realize that it could have been conversations, because depending on past experience or no experience at all, if this is their first audiobook ever, they don't recognize or realize that there are all these other moments where you can connect with the narrator and say, hey, this character has a bit of a list, but doesn't really come up until book seconds in the series. But just so you
Yeah.
know, since it's book one.
Yeah. All those little things help. Hmm.
Does. Once you have that information, how do you go about deciding how these characters are going to sound and tones? Because it's different than having an accent versus the cadence and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, definitely, like if the writing is good and strong, and I'd like to say that, 90% of the stuff I've done is good writing. Like there might be a few from the beginning that were a little boring or a little bit, they weren't like Nobel Berry Prize. I don't know. I don't know any of the award names, but
Mm-hmm.
like they weren't
To
Harry
your
Potter.
liking, yeah.
Not even to my liking, but like not so specific. But a lot of the ones I do read, you'll notice the characters jumping out at you, the patterns of their speech, like or their vocabulary, or their attitudes and their energies, like they kind of jump out at you if you're really reading with sort of a director's mind, really, because we've got to. I believe that we have to first interpret it like a director. We interpret that text like a director, and then we flesh it out like every actor in the show. Like it's like a one-person show.
Mm-hmm.
So when they jump out at me, and I imagine them in my head, and that's what I always use to govern it. Not, oh, I'm really good at accents, so I'm just gonna throw in. I'm gonna give this character, like a Middle Eastern accent because I can do that. I don't do it like that because it doesn't. It's not our job to make ourselves look like how look how many things I can do, but it's our job to be like, I can just channel this story. I can channel this author's words and say what they couldn't say or how they couldn't say it.
Right, because when we're reading the book via eyeball reading, it's at least for me, I kind of see like a movie play out, and the
Yeah.
characters, launch out, onto my quote unquote screen based off of the descriptive and what the character is showing me based on what the author wrote. And that could also be, if they get excited, they start talking a lot faster. If it's a moment where the best friend pops in and she knows that she has to kick some ass, so she, before she gets through that door, she's going to prep herself, but we don't know that until, based off of other conversations that we find maybe later on, that's what they have to do. So it's one of those where we find the information from the author, but sometimes there's always room for like, okay, I can do it this way or I can do it that way. And that
Yeah.
is definitely where, the experience of the narrator, and sometimes that freedom is great that you're able to have that to give us, the listeners, a little bit more oomph, right?
Yeah. Well, you have to understand like the state, like the basically that like the energy, the state of energy of the scene, and also the state of being of whatever character perspective you're giving. So, if it's something, I don't know, something as simple as like, look, here he comes. What are you worried? Do you care about that? Are you excited? Are you turned on? Like, you know, look, here he comes. Or like, look, here he comes. Or, if we were to get sexual, which we won't, but there's so many different ways you can interpret it, but it depends on the situation. So being specific and understanding where you're at in the story is just so, I think it's why we get so kind of I don't know how to say it in a PC way.
What do you mean by like how we get so emotionally
Like,
involved, or?
no, we get so like good at shifting what is needed. So, you go through a million different character personalities, a million different states of being, and you're expressing a whole world, and the ability to shift through that narrative, character, dialogue, inner monologue, and different perspectives it's just kind of shifty. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's one of those things, like when I say something, the one thing I always say is like, I don't know that I pissed you off unless you tell me, or you have that reaction right in front of my face, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I said something or how I said it, it could have been misinterpreted, because we all hear what one is saying, but then we have our moods. Like that's why I always like texting or email reading. I'm always like,
Hmm.
okay, if I'm in a pissy ass mood, that text that comes through that says okay fine may just be okay fine versus okay fine. And so it's one of those where you kind of have to have that conversation of like, hey, I noticed a little bit of a shift in your body language, if we were fortunate enough to see it in front of each other. Or am I reading this the right way? I just want to make sure, because I don't want to go, bitch, what the fuck, if it wasn't meant like that. Or also let me know if I get to be bitch, what the fuck moment, because I will get you there if I have to.
Yeah.
And then be fighting words. But that's where the conversation needs to happen, I think, regardless of the scenario, whether it's the author that gets your first 15 minutes and say, hey, love what you did there, but that's not exactly the character, that's somebody else. Or
Hmm.
like, hey, can we connect real quick, because I had some thoughts. And I
Yeah.
want to check in with you on that. And a lot of times we will probably save a lot of anguish and angst if that conversation would just happen. I mean, we say it about the books all
Hmm.
the time, right? Like if they would have just talked to each other. But
Yeah.
it happens sometimes, and it's how you handle it after you find out, right? I think that's also key. Once you know,
Hmm.
how do you handle that, and then kind of go from
Yeah.
there. Mm-hmm.
But like being direct that's why I have no problem with people being direct in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
I'm not sensitive like that. I can take anything. It's just like, just tell me so we don't waste our time, you know.
Yeah, it's and that's true. I mean, again, open lines of communication and knowing that it's great that you won't get offended, but also like, be nice. I mean, you can be
Yeah.
kind, and
Yeah, of
stuff like
course.
that, and professional without busting out with like any sort of just, meanness or just laziness of being able to not communicate properly. It's the other thing too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think people can be a little rather lazy in expressing themselves. And I'm like, take this 2 seconds, breathe. Now, how would you say that nicely to get the result that you would like? Have to remind them, like,
Yeah.
this is not my kid I'm talking to, but still sometimes they need it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
believe me. When
Mhm.
I work with teenagers every day, and I'm like,
Oh
"No, what was
God.
your intention?"
Uh-huh.
Because I am not taking that. You are not talking to me like that in my house, my
Mm-hmm.
classroom, my house. You
Right.
will
Yep.
not speak to me like that. What was your intention? Try again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I will find myself saying things like, and how could you have said that differently in order to get the result that you were looking for?
Yep.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people just need to stop for a second and just think of that before
For sure.
the
Yeah.
intent. Ugh, it would make for a nice, better world, but one day, right?
Maybe. Probably in space. I've been doing like a lot
Maybe.
of sci-fi lately, and I'm
Yeah.
like maybe we will leave this place. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's just a different atmosphere, right? We get into different, Mach 0, whatever kind of thing, and
Yeah.
people will hopefully realize, ooh, being nice does not take that much energy, or it's not that big of a deal. Just be nice, be kind, people.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up accents before, and as listeners, we do love them, and I think it doesn't really matter what kind it is, and it's just nice when it's done properly. Do you have a favorite accent to perform?
Like in books or just in general? Because there are some that I love performing, but they just haven't showed up in books I've done yet.
Oh, okay, well, how about both? We never know. You might get cast in a book now with the accent since you tell us.
So I love Australian accents, and I know there are different ones based on the region and whatever where you've been. Like I get it. I know dialect. There are dialects too, but Australian's one I really like playing around with. Um, Different kinds of British accents I love, and I like a good general like Central European accent. I love doing those too. Yeah. And I'm pretty mixed. I'm pretty mixed race, so like no one can really get mad at me usually. 99% of the time, nobody can get mad at me. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, again, important conversations to have, right? But knowing
Yeah.
also too that there might be certain things that we have limits on based on ethnicity or background,
Mm-hmm.
and there might be a better option out there opportunity wise for to recast it if it's not the right one. But yeah, being having that mix. Do you mind if I ask you what's your background for your mix?
Yeah. Well, so I'm Greek and I'm black and I'm Native American with a sliver of Scottish somewhere down the line.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's mainly it.
Did you do one of those tests to find out, or just more family conversations?
I did one of those tests as well, but no, but I've always known those
Mm-hmm.
things.
Okay.
The other things that came out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit like a teensy bit Middle Eastern, and basically from everywhere the white people are not from. So that's what I found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm curious about mine. So I might do it one of these days. Being from first generation American, my mom was from Chile and my dad was from Cuba. And if you keep going backwards, there's like Italian and natives of South Americans and stuff like that. But I'm like, I know there's a European in there. It's like just to kind of pinpoint some of these things. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, I'm like, I'm just a mutt. I have a little bit of everything, and that's okay.
I love it.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, and I really like because obviously I live here now.
Mm-hmm. So question, how did you end up there? Because that's one of the, I mean, I always find it fascinating when people travel, period. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to stay in a completely different country to work, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really w- I wasn't allowed to just be an actor when I was going, when I was like 17. I was like, I just want to run away and be an actor on stage. My parents were like, no, you need to have a job that has consistent pay and everything. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, fine, I'm going to go study here a million miles away. And they're like, nope, you need to graduate with a degree before you leave. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I was stuck. I was only allowed to apply to my local university. And I did. I got into a specialized, like, small enrollment theater program, which was great. Like, it was amazing. I loved it. But then the moment I graduated, I got my teaching degree as well. So I had two degrees, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna stay here in like my hometown. I'm not gonna stay here and be broke. I'm not gonna, because a lot of people who even graduated as teachers
Yeah.
in my town, they were just they were back at Starbucks, they were back at McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't doing it for me. So I left and I applied to a bunch of schools around the world to be a drama teacher there. With my theater degree and whatever my education degrees, I was like qualified to do it. So I did it, and a lot of schools hired me right out of university. And once I started, I didn't think I was going to do it forever. I thought I was going to do it for like a couple of years, but now it's been like a really long time, and it worked. And I'm glad that I at least that I started out there. Just I'm happy with the experience that I had with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I ended up here in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because sometimes we're like, I'm not going to stay in my hometown. You went the freaking A all the way across to different continents and literally the
Yeah,
opposite end of the world for where we're here. But that's awesome. I know that teaching is a love of mine. I wanted to be a teacher when I was in high school, and then I started working for the school system, and I'm like, yeah, no, the
that's the thing too. I
pay.
would never be a teacher back home. That's the thing, because it's yeah,
It's yeah, so many
especially in
things.
the U.S.,
Yeah,
not in the
so many
U.S.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was like, yeah, no. And then I ended up marrying a teacher. And so I see all
Oh, cool.
the, yeah, I see all the things and stuff like that. But every once in a while, I'm like, hey, honey, do you want to go like to another country and you can teach English to non-speakers in that country and we can make more money and just be in a different place? And he's looking at me
Yeah.
like, maybe. I'm like, okay, let's figure this out.
Yeah, let me know. I
Yeah.
know people like around the world now because once you work at a couple
Nice.
schools, you know like everybody. So let me know.
All right,
Yeah,
we'll
we can
do
talk
that.
after this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
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 It's fascinating to me too, because a lot of people think, oh, you're uplifting your roots and you're moving somewhere else. It's scary when you leave. Hell, I left for 4 hours away and I drove from Miami to Orlando, and it was a little scary. And also having parents, as you know, especially if they're immigrant parents or a little bit older generation, my mom did not believe that I was leaving Miami to move away until she saw me put the boxes in the truck to leave.
Oh,
I know.
yeah.
And then everyone, I would get calls. I'm like, Bibi, I wanted to stop by and buy you some pastelitos to bring to your house. And then I remembered that you're in Orlando. I'm like, oh my
Oh.
God. That lasted a few years. Oh goodness. But it's just one of those things where it's having that it kind of tells us generationally, right, where our parents are, where they're like, you have to have
Yeah.
a degree, and you're like, fine. And I know other people that will listen to this, like, you're an adult. Why do you have to listen to your parents and do what they say if you're over 18? Like, it all depends on your ethnicity and your background, dude.
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They kick our asses. It doesn't matter how old we get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like now I go back and it's like everybody's doing THC products. Everybody's swearing. Everyone's doing everything I was yelled at for doing when I was a teenager. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I see how it is. I was
Mm-hmm.
before my time.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing when our parents become grandparents. The whole, don't eat the cookie before dinner goes away
Hmm.
for the grandkids.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean they can have the cookie? They don't have to eat their vegetables? Like, no, those were the fights, especially with my niece when she was a kid. I'm like, Mom, you didn't let us do it. Why are you letting her do it? She goes, she's just I'm like, stop, mother. I think sometimes they learn the where the importance lies versus the requirements. Plus, they get to now they're grandparents. They just return them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cookies over the
Mm.
rules, always.
Yeah. Now the adult in us goes, I'm going to cake first, and that's okay.
Yeah. I feel like I think we're around the same age. I think so. But I feel like our generation, it was all like, no, you have to do this, you have to do that, with almost no logic behind it. And now we're like, you know what? I'm gonna stay up till, 3 in the morning watching cartoons and eating cake. Because
Yeah. I
no
don't.
one can tell me anymore.
Right? I'm telling you, it's just one of those like I can stay up one more chapter because of one more chapter and not get in trouble, even if I have to work the next day at ungodly hours or stuff like that. But then again, now I'm the adult and I make my own schedule because I work from home, so I have nothing recording or booking or anything to do before 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's like,
Nice. Oh,
so
that's a nice
yeah,
schedule.
it
Yeah.
can be, but then I'm also working weekends and nights, so yeah.
Mm,
But it's a passion. And just like
yeah.
audiobooks, I'm sure is for you, is there a particular type of scene in a book that you're like, yes, we're getting to that one that you just love performing?
Yeah, well, and these are the ones that I like I don't have as many pickups or like
Mm-hmm.
mistakes. Do your listeners know all the terms?
I always try to air with the yes, but at the same time, we always get new folks. So please tell us exactly in case those that may not know what these terms are for pickups, for an example.
Yeah, so pickups are just basically when you make a mistake and you get sent a list of the things you made a mistake on, and you have to re-record it. So we call them pickups.
Thank you.
So yeah, no problem. Um, so I get way less pickups if it's a really spicy scene, or if it's a really there's like murder involved. It's high tension.
Okay.
I do a lot of horror and romance, so like these come frequently.
Oh my goodness. Talk about opposite side of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
When it comes down to these genres. I will say though that a lot of the authors I've spoken to recently, maybe within the past year and a half, when I asked them the question of like, is there a genre that you have yet to write in that you'd want to? Horror has been coming up way more often than I'm like, is it because of the pandemic? Have you been stuck at home with someone that you're like, you know? But they're like, no,
Yeah,
it's a challenge. I'm like, okay, who hurt you?
there's a lot of good like psychological stuff coming out
Yes. Good,
that I love.
good.
And
So,
even just within romance, just
mhm,
different subgenres are coming out, like a lot of sci-fi,
yes.
but romance as well. And yeah, I'm so excited about some stuff that's coming up.
Good, good. I mean, that's the thing with romance that I do love is that it's an umbrella term and we have all these different subgenres underneath there from the PNRs to the sci-fi to like the cozy mysteries or romantic suspense if you want to have things go kaboom and try to figure out who done it to the contemporaries to even the Amish romance where things fade to black or Hallmark
Yeah,
as I like to call them because there's always something for everybody. And
I call them
nothing.
Hallmark too. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's certain ones I'm like, I love this. It's like a Hallmark movie. It's so cute.
Yes, I know. I'm a sucker for Hallmarks. I think I'm all for, I'm like, a girl, I have an imagination. I'm good. But when there's that tension or the banter, that to me are usually the best parts of the books for me. The spicy
Oh
stuff is
yeah.
always a little bit more like bonus. And or like, did not know that was what it was called and did not realize I had that kink. Good to know. So you kind of like, okay, I'm learning here. But a
Yeah,
good
I'm all
story.
there for
Oof.
sharing it with
Yeah.
everyone. I love it.
Yeah, it's when it's a good
Yeah.
story. So since you like the Hallmarks, do you kind of like find yourself around the holidays more into the Hallmark stuff or no?
Sometimes, yeah. 'Cause and the thing is, I don't usually like Hallmark movies unless wait, was it Lifetime? Who did the VC Andrews? Who's been doing the VC Andrews movies?
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
no, I
She was my
don't. What's
favorite author growing up, so like
BC Andrews? I'll have to look that up.
she aka he, the ghostwriter was he,
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Niederman, um but I think it might be Lifetime. So if it's stuff like that, I'll watch it any time of the year. If it's like that romantic holiday movie type stuff, yeah, yeah, I'll
Okay.
watch it.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen until I started narrating. I didn't really like those ones till I started
Yeah.
narrating.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I think it's when I started reading more romance that I started like, going, oh, Hallmark, okay. And then they did a couple of things too that I'm going, oh, she fell in love with the ghost. Okay, that's gonna be interesting. How are they gonna get away from that, or with it kind of a thing? It's always interesting sometimes the how are they going to get there is always part of the interesting fact because from a romance perspective, we all know that there's gonna be an HEA, happily ever
Yeah.
after. They're gonna get
Yeah.
together. I just want to know
Hmm.
how. That's my
Exactly.
that's my thing. With
It's funny you mentioned the ghost because I've got an upcoming one.
no, really.
I am the ghost.
You are the ghost.
I am the ghost. Yeah, and yeah, there's some love between the ghost and the human.
Oh my
It's it was
goodness.
it's really cute
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
really different too.
I'm gonna check that one out. You have to tell us later which one that
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
But it's definitely something that I think because there's so many different genres, you kind of also have the ability to do these different ones. Of all the genres that you have done, which one have you not done yet that you really want to?
Oh yeah, and it's a shame because I think I'd be really good at it. It's just thriller. I want to do more thriller and young adult because I do like like my continuum, my spectrum. It's like all or nothing. It's like either like children's, like straight up children's, like really good stuff that's children's, or like all the way to the other end, like straight up erotica, and I do that under a pseudonym. But there's not much in between. It's either the most like explicit or the most innocent. That's what I
Hmm.
find I get. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh,
there is some in between, like with with the sci-fi and horror and stuff like that. But generally, it's not that middle stuff. Yeah.
wow. Okay. So do you like to do the sci-fi aside from you didn't do more thrillers, but you've done sci-fi, you've done contemporary, what other stuff and genres that you have that you enjoy doing?
A lot of gay stuff. Like just in general, like I'm doing like a gay nonfiction. I'm about to start recording. Like I do that. I do gay historical fiction, gay rom-com, gay romance, gay. A lot of gay stuff. And I'm here for it because
Yeah.
especially like in sci-fi, we're finally getting LGBTQIA2S plus
Yes.
representation, and I'm freaking here for it. Like I'm like, yeah, because we didn't have that really. And if someone was like queer, you would just allude to it in these kind of sci-fi stories. They would allude to it.
Yeah, or it
They
was a secondary character that we didn't get any information aside for that one scene that they popped in and out of, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or like you'd feel bad for them, but now it's just like, you know what? No, Victoria's freaking hot and she's gonna bang every girl she wants to because she's hot and she's powerful. Like I love
Yes.
that. Like I'm
Yeah.
here for it.
It, it's definitely one that I am finding that people are not only the authors are more wanting to and willing to write it, but also the readers and the listeners are willing to look into it and check it out. And it's important. The representation
Yeah.
is important as much as people want to say, oh, I don't identify with the girl because she's a size 2 and I'm a size 16. And I'm going, well, okay,
Hmm.
well, what about the fact that you fall in love with your partner? They're not the opposite gender. It's, fill in the blank of the options that we
Hmm.
have in the world. And how about the representation there? And,
Yeah.
and that's important, and I think it's great that we're finally starting to see it more. I know that I actually had a lot of clients that were writers that wrote and the publisher right now is no longer in business for bad behavior, but it was
Hmm.
great to see the authors writing these love stories in paranormal and contemporary, and they did all sorts of different genres, and writing that happily ever after for the two men or the two women or the non-binaries, transgender. And it's just nice. I'm like, I want love for everyone.
Oh yeah, I'm totally like I'm honored to be a part of this shift in literature.
Yeah, it's good. And also too, finding the narrators that are going to do it justice. Because unfortunately, like even with accents, that whole stereotypical he's Irish, and then you're like busting out the Lucky Charms. Irish,
Yeah.
you don't want that for an accent, and you don't want that kind for any, that kind of stereotypicalness to any kind of character in
Yeah.
a human being.
I would like to do Irish. I've got like Irish friends and like I'm accents are one of my things, but I don't think I've heard any
Hmm.
audiobook done in with Irish or done well.
Yeah. Well,
That I can think of. Yeah.
there's a couple of
I'm sure you can
narrators
give
that
me
do it.
recommendations. Yeah.
Absolutely, but I will say it's kind of funny too, as readers and listeners. Sometimes we think we know more or better than that of the narrator or the author, and
Hmm.
they've been two instances which I find freaking hilarious, where the narrator is Irish in one of them, and he has his native accents. I mean, and he's really good with accents in general. And then in this one particular book and review, it was an Irish accent, and he did the Irish accent, and the person's like, that's not a real Irish accent. And I'm going, oh, do you know what you're referring to? This is an Irish individual kind of a thing. And then another time it was a British narrator, and got the review of his British accent just sucks. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
oh, dude, he's British, and like British as they come, traditional London kind of accent where you think it was hilarious. I love it. It's one of those moments where like, so but
That's
in
so
other
funny.
yeah, so it's one of those. Yeah, there's a couple of good Irish narrators that do Irish accents. I'll let you know off air who they are, because they do
Yeah.
a really good job, and for you to
Cool.
listen to how that works. But again, it goes back to the having the narrators with that information and having them be able to do a good accent, even if it's just enough that we can say, "Ooh, Irish," right? Versus
Yeah.
thickness. Because if I went to, I mean, I love a good Highlander story. Um, but I also know that if I had to listen to someone actually from, Scottish accent, it's gonna be a long ass book because the Scottish accent's heavy and it ain't sexy if you're doing it, all the time like that. I'm like, no. Then I hear Scotty from Star Trek. I can't do it, Captain. Goodness. But I'm glad that you're doing more, queer books out there that are the authors are writing them and that you're being able to narrate them. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and I like doing straight books too, or like bi awakening books.
Mm-hmm. Those are always fun.
So much fun. Yeah. I'm lucky, or no, I'm not lucky. I worked my ass off, and
Good.
now I'm grateful for the array of things I can do.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know sometimes people are like, oh, I was lucky. Like, there's a little bit of luck involved in everything, but you also have
Yeah.
to work your ass for it. And I think that that's where it's important.
Yeah.
So, so one of the things I do love to play with my guests to get to know them better is the truth, and a lie. And so if you're ready with your three things of which one you had to redo.
Yeah. Okay, so I take out that one. All right.
All
You
right.
ready?
Yep.
All right. I have lived on every continent except for Antarctica, and Oceania. I have had a few near-death experiences, and I have been married for 5 years.
Okay. Perfect. And these are the things where you're like, details, details, details are all the things.
Yeah.
They married for 5 years. We all know that you're married. Now we have to figure out if it's been 5 years or more or less. Lived in every continent except for two, and had near-death experience. Five.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All of which very plausible.
Fun. So fun.
So fun, right? That near-death experience, fantastic. Jesus. Is the lie that you've had the near-death experience?
No.
Okay. Oh, you do like to travel, and you've been teaching for a while, so you've been see what I mean? See. But every
Yeah.
continent. Is that the lie then? That living in every continent except for the two?
Yeah. Because I haven't lived in South America or Africa either.
Yet.
Yeah, yet. We'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll see.
Yeah, things are really comfortable here.
Yeah, that's good. So wow, okay, so married for 5 years, that's a good thing. That was good.
Yeah.
But that's crazy near death experiences. Those are never cool.
No, they're weird though, and they
Yeah,
make for good stories if you make it.
that is
Like
true.
people always they love hearing those.
Mhm. Right?
Yeah,
And sometimes you're
another
like,
type.
yes, right. The next time that you come on the podcast, we're like, okay, so the last time you were here, we were getting to know you, but now that we're friends and we are BFFs, about that near death experience, do tell.
Yeah, there's like the to be continued.
Yes, perfect. You work with words all day long. And
Yeah.
I always find it fascinating to see what your favorite word is. And that's different from your favorite curse word, because that's the second part of the story of the question.
Oh,
Mhm.
well, you took it away. I don't know. Um, I I don't know. My favorite word. I think just when I learn a new word and I can say it and it doesn't feel like tricky.
That becomes your
Because
favorite.
yeah, when I can say it and it sounds natural and it's a big word, or if
Mm.
I learn that I've been mispronouncing something my whole life, those are kind of my favorite words because I'm like, oh, whoa, like we're always learning and it makes it so it's never boring. But I can't think of a specific one
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Yeah, that works though. I mean, it's good to, again, being a learner is always a good thing, I think.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
finding that joy of having a favorite word that's different every single time it becomes a new favorite, that's always a good thing too. So
Yeah, I'm curious AF. You can take that in whatever way you want, but I'm a curious person.
that's good. Curiosity, there's nothing wrong with it. So long as you know what the potential biting might happen afterwards for being, if you want to take that leap.
Biting.
Yeah. I knew we were gonna be friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, always take I mean, I'm all for taking a risk, or checking something and trying something new, just as long as you know what's the outcomes could be, or like, don't put your
Oh, for
hands over a
sure.
hot stovetop thinking, does this burn? I'm like, how about you get a little closer? Does that irritate you? Yeah, and it's gonna burn. But if you want that burn, go for it.
Yeah.
So on the second part of that question being, what's your favorite curse word?
Um, probably fuck.
Why did you laugh like that? Like,
Just because I think that's the first time I realized I swore in this, but I probably dropped
yes.
it a few other ones.
No, actually, you've
I
been
never
really
realize when
good.
I am. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. That's why I always tell my guests.
They usually swear a lot.
Some of them do. It's been really interesting. I've had some authors, particularly, and even some narrators that have, they curse in the books. There's no problems in the books cursing it or when they're narrating it, but then they're talking to me and it's like prim and proper. No, there's shenanigans and freaks and stuff like that, little other words instead of cursing. And then there's others that are like completely dropping, fuck this bullshit, that whatever, and it's perfectly fine. That's also why I say it is an 18 plus over. But I always find it fascinating sometimes when those some do and don't. I'm like, do you realize that in your last book you had 200 fucks and you did not say it once in this podcast the entire time?
It's hard because it's like we go into kind of like marketing mode when it's our face on it, but when it's somebody else's words, we're that is our job. We're there to give the other words, and if we feel that uncomfortable, we won't do the work or we'll use a pseudonym. But it's such like a we're representing our business when we're just out there speaking freely with no agent,
Yeah,
no manager to control us.
yeah, I know. Trust me. Unfortunately, I do know that. I will
Yeah.
say though that, for me, I'm the girl that believes that you can take me into the corporate business meeting with the executive and know that I will be professional and not quote unquote curse unless it's like that moment of if I'm doing some form of presentation. In my case, for the day job, it wouldn't come up at all because I work for Disney. But in other
Oh
cases,
yeah.
sometimes it's needed. But even when I'm doing workshops and things like that, it's all about who the audience is for me. If the audience is romance, I will bust out with something like, okay, just so you know, I can use fuck as an adjective, a verb, and a pronoun. So, just letting you know. And it's
Yeah.
and it's also awesome that they've done the studies that growing up, I was always told I was better and I'm not cursing because I would have to use my brain and be able to articulate, more and kind of come across smarter. And I'm going, no, I'm just as intelligent if I tell you to go fuck off versus take a long walk off a very short pier. And sometimes
Yeah.
people, I think, are now realizing that, you do have to know who your audience is. In my case, for this podcast, the audience varies and they all know that I love and adore them. So you're gonna hear a fuck here or there. I mean,
Nice.
we're romance. Come on.
Yeah.
Sounds in different areas. But yeah, but I agree. I think sometimes people need to realize that you are your brand and you are your business, and how you behave in public says a lot, and how we can conduct the business aside is different. So that's also true. It's always about whatever is most comfortable for you guys as my guests. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's important.
Yeah. I try not to make the decisions from fear, but just to be, truly you and not come at anything with the intention to be, a jackass or be hateful or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I want you to be your authentic self with me and on this
Yeah.
show, kind of a thing. I think that it can be kind of hard sometimes for some folks to be authentically themselves, but I also want them to be comfortable. And I always think of it like you guys are coming over to my house technically, and I'm inviting you to come over. So I want you to be safe and feel, that you can be yourself and let your guard down. But I'm also going to protect you. And if you bust out saying something that, I'm going to be like, hey, I love you, right? But we're going to edit that out. Yeah, or like ding ding ding, let's not talk about that. You guys have also aired out your own pseudonyms sometimes, and it's hilarious how that happens. So I'm always like, no, mental punch
Oh
and roll.
yeah. Yeah. I didn't say mine. I'm
No.
not ashamed. I love him. Yeah. I love my pseudonym, but it's just not for everybody to know.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a bit of that whole mystery, and you kind of have to have
Yeah.
fun with, right? A little bit. So it's always good. It's about being the respectfulness. I know some fans who love a narrator, their logic behind trying to find out what that pseudonym is, maybe to get quote unquote more books from that individual. But the reality is something that I've always told everyone is respect the individual's preference to not share the info. If you stumble across it, fine, keep it to yourself. Posting it online in comments, that's something I've been seeing lately, especially with the newer audio groups that are for
Hmm.
fans and listeners, is that they're busting out sharing pseudonyms just because you might be open to it. Like, let's say that you were completely fine with anybody knowing who it was and you're sharing it here. It's still not my place to share that information anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, like somebody outed a narrator's pseudonym on my Instagram in my comments, but another narrator messaged me and was like, "Hey, somebody like outed this narrator." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I didn't even know." Like I don't always see every comment, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm like, "Okay, cool." Like I'll shut that down right away. Yeah, and just tell the person, be like, "Hey, guess what? Not cool."
Yeah, I have to have that conversation a few times. And there's also, because we have waves of new listeners coming into this world of ours all the time, especially
Hmm.
since the past pandemic, there's been a lot of educating that we've had to do, unfortunately. And some people don't give a flying fuck,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And those are the ones that were like, okay, well, you're not welcomed in our circles and you're not welcomed in these groups. And, we're going to let the narrator know that you're continuing to behave this way, and bye bye. And others
Yeah.
will be like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I'm like, do some fucking research, folks. Come on. There's an entire Frolic article on this, for fuck's sakes. But also just common decency. Like, if you bust out with, I want to be called by your middle name instead of your first legal name, respect that and just call you by that name that you're giving me. And that's enough. And that should be enough, just because you want me to do that.
Yeah.
So here's to hoping
But
that more
on
people.
the other on the other side of things, I am a nosy but respectful bitch. So I want to know everybody's pseudonym just to
Yeah.
have for my personal information. I just like to know.
Yeah, no, I mean that there's
But I will not
nothing
out
wrong with
anyone.
it. Exactly. I think there's nothing wrong with, if you come across it, if someone is sharing it, more on a private level and things like that. And sometimes it happens where, information is shared, or some of you guys have distinct voices and there's a
Hmm.
cadence and stuff like that. So when you're like, wait a minute, I mean, nothing like listening to a Disney commercial while I'm in the hospital, months back, and going, oh shit, I know who that is,
Yeah.
because the voice is distinct. But it's not one of those where I'm going to bust out with, hey guys, guess what? No, I think
No.
sometimes society nowadays, people want to be the ones that say, guess what? I know. I'm in the loop. I'm in the know. I'm like, bitch, shut the fuck up. No one cares.
Yeah.
Because, so it's always wanting to one up each other. But again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to know. And if you do your due diligence, or if it comes up across, or even I've gone to the point where I've invited one as a guest and I'm like, damn, you sound so familiar. And I'm not quite sure, but I'm like, okay. So I emailed them and I said, hey, let me know how close I am to this. And are you also XYZ? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, thank you. Appreciate the trust. And then I'm like, yes, I was right. But at the same time, I'm going, I appreciate the trust. It won't, mum's the word, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a fun thing. I think it's fun sometimes to have a pseudonym. If I could do it over again, I probably would, for my stuff in business with audiobooks, just for shits and giggles. Be kind of fun.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is cool, like, just knowing that you can tag in somebody else, like your alter ego. It's so fun.
Yes. Yeah. Especially for you too as an actor as well. Talk about having even a little bit more freedoms and insights to having that kind of opportunity as well. Because I know I would love it. But in my next time, in my next life, I'll do something like that maybe. Note to self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for like the moment that somebody I know like comes to me and they're like, "Oh my God, there's this one narrator and it's my pseudonym." And I'm like, "Girl, that's me. You're welcome."
Oh, see, I would fuck with them first. I'm like, no, really? So do you think that they're sexy? Do you like how they do it? And yeah, see, and then when they're starting to,
Yeah.
yeah, they're like, yeah, God, he's hot. I'm like, thanks. What do you mean that's me? I'm like, I appreciate you thinking I'm hot.
Right.
Yeah. Mm. Oh my goodness. Before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you?
Yeah. So oddly, I'm working on two nonfiction books. I don't do nonfiction generally, but I've just started booking them out of nowhere. So I have two nonfiction books coming up, and then I have a horror book that I need to record soon too, and that is a really cool one. It's I think I can say it because I didn't sign an NDA, but it won the 2019 Bram Stoker Award for horror. It's called Coyote Rage by Owl Going Back. So I'm excited for that one. Like that's really it's a good story.
Good.
It won an award for a reason, for maybe a few reasons.
Okay.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. And then I think is this one of the nonfiction, the language of love and loss? Is that
No,
one of them?
that one's no, that was a really heavy, like I call it because there's a lot of gay. It's like chick lit, but it's with gay men. So I call it dick lit. I think
Oh
that needs
my
to be the
God,
new.
that needs to be a sticker.
Yeah, dick lit is it's here, and I've done a few now. So this is another one of them. Very heavy topics, dark comedy.
Oh,
It's a beautiful book. But yeah, that
okay.
comes out soon too.
Okay. Yeah, it's coming out May
Next week.
23rd. Yeah, next
Yeah,
week. So
cool.
it will be available by the time this airs. But I was wondering
Oh,
too,
good.
because the cover looks a little bit more like potentially having it be a nonfiction, because it's just a lot of words.
Yeah.
Because that's usually I'm like that. Okay, yeah, that's a nonfiction. But I also love the colors and thing and how they have it there. But I'm so going to have to make that sticker that says Dicklet as far as the genre goes.
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and tell people on TikTok because TikTok's illegal here. That's why I don't have it.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Yeah, I'm not
right.
shy or anything. I don't.
You just illegal for
It's
you. Wow.
blocked. Even if you send me like a funny TikTok, I
You can't
can't
look.
view it.
Yeah, because it picks up your IP address.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no matter
Wow.
what.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
I'll have to.
sad.
It's sad. Well, they're trying to ban it here in the States, so
Oh,
yeah, they're trying to as far as making it illegal too. But I'm like, y'all, there's so many other things you could be working about and worrying about. I don't know, school shootings, women's rights to their
yeah.
bodies, you know,
To name
really
a
drag
few. Yeah.
queens, let them read them, let them read their reading. It's okay. Yeah. Just to name a few. Those were just three. I mean, really, that you could be focusing on. There's an entire list that could
Yeah.
take precedence before that one, but it is what it is. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for being part of this year's Audiobook Lovin Series. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I had a good time too.
Thank you. Everyone, thank you for hanging out with us today, and we hope you've enjoyed this interview as well as the series. I'll make sure to include Curtis's socials that he does have, that it's legal for him to have, on our main landing page for this year's Audiobook Lovin 2023 series over at Viviana Enchantress of Books. And until next time, happy listenings.
A special thank you to authors DJ Krimmer, Tana Stone, Landon Beach, PJ Fiala, and all of our sponsors of the Audiobook Lovin 2023 series.
Visit today's episode post to listen to sound clips of some of the books we discussed and enter the month-long giveaway. If you enjoyed the Audiobook Lovin podcast series and you want more, join the Audiobook Lovin podcast Patreon for early access to podcasts, exclusive content like the Would You Rather game and dinner party guests, and additional incentives such as bloopers, graphics, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobooklovin. Thank you for joining Viviana and her guests for this podcast, and we hope you tune in again as we continue to celebrate Audiobook Month. The Audiobook Lovin Series is hosted by Viviana, the Enchantress of Books. Please make sure to visit the main page linked within the post to learn more about the entire Audiobook Lovin series and the enchanting author and narrator guests who have joined us over the years. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a review wherever you listened, and please follow us on social media platforms and subscribe to the Viviana the Enchantress of Books newsletter. Until next time, happy listening. Audiobook Lovin hopes you have enjoyed this program.